Hello, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm on a new live chat. I had to open up another computer because the other one stopped working. So I don't know. Let me know if you're here. Let me know if you have found me over here because I essentially had, hey, Dana. I essentially had to end that stream. There was no way for me to restart it back. So here I am. We're going to continue. Sorry about that. We are just going to pick back up. Now, the video quality on this isn't quite as good, but I think really it's the sound that we really need. It's as long as you can really hear me, that's really all that matters. Hi, the Indie Era. Hi, Menagerie of Magic. Hey, I'm just glad that you guys found me back over here. Now, I know that you said the last thing that you heard before it went out was that there are different species of grays. And I'm not sure what I was saying. Pardon me. Not sure what I was saying there. However, we are just going to keep moving on. Definitely getting kind of like a feedback thing here. It was funny that you said it sounded like I was beatboxing. Maybe I should. Maybe that would lighten the energy a little. So the Indie Era, I know that you had asked a question about feeling like you have an attachment, a gray attachment. And really what I say for any attachment that we have for really anything is I kind of start the same way. I start at the beginning. I mean, if it's demonic possession or, like a gray attachment, or even if it's just infestation, which happens a lot when you have a very psychic person who is ungrounded. It happens all the time. Or a very psychic person who has not felt their pain and felt their trauma, who is trying to avoid some pain, trying to avoid some areas in their life that brings pain. So oftentimes this can kind of bring in, some infestation, just things kind of hanging about that the person is accidentally in resonance with. And this has definitely happened to me before. I'm not trying to make anyone feel like singled out or like, oh my God, it's really just, I think for me personally, I think it's an initiation process that we all go through. I really do. And then I think that the New Age kind of community is a little bit too embarrassed to want to admit this. But I think that it's part of it. I think it's an initiation. We kind of have to get through that and then kind of feel that embarrassment, like feel that shame of like, oh, was I tricked? Or, oh, was I not doing that right? Like, was I kind of dark? I think it's important to understand that that's an initiation. It just happens. And getting through it is what is important. And growing is what is important, because the whole idea of having an attachment, if you have Indie Era, if you have a gray attachment, what's going to happen is you're going to not feel like you have energy. You're not going to feel like you can do what you want to do. You're going to feel like, I have all these dreams and I have no interest in them anymore. It feels kind of like depression. When I see a gray attachment, what they have done, what they always do, is they cut you off from your gifts, from your dreams, from the thing you used to do that you were really good at, that you loved doing when you were a kid. You would just lose hours doing it as a kid, whatever that thing was. That's what the attachments take away. That's specifically that is what I see the grays doing. I see the grays specifically using frequency technology, actually, with people. Like the tall, I have to make sure I get this stuff out too, because I'm like, I have no idea what these Q&As are doing. It's like split up now, and I might have to go back. And if I'm repeating myself, just bear with me, because I don't know what you guys heard and what I haven't said yet. So But what is really important to know is that, especially when you hear stories of like the tall grays or grays holding a rod, like some kind of rod is a common story, and pointing it at children, it's a frequency thing, it's a frequency generator. And I've heard so many like new age people, and I myself thought this too, oh, they're bolstering their energy, they're healing them, it's love and light. And really that is not what I see when I'm looking back now, for myself and others. I see it as more of a like a frequency tag, and also kind of like a way to keep someone from fulfilling their dreams, and also from fulfilling their past lives. It's like a bloodline gifts and bloodline abilities, passed down from the generations that should be yours. Like they want to keep you from having that. They want to keep, it's like they want to steal it. They want to keep you trapped with them. And so if that is something that you're feeling, that could absolutely be, that's just what the grays do. That's what they've kind of done to everyone that I've really seen messed with them. Now, what we do is we work through it. So getting into therapy can be one of the easiest ways to get rid of our demons. So it's not always an exorcism and it's not always a possession, right? Just because we have attachments, if you have attachments, it doesn't mean that you need like a full-blown exorcism. Now, shamanic and energy work could help, absolutely. But what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to go into like beating yourself up or like anyone feeling bad or like that, the guilt, like the kind of new age guilt thing is a funny thing, I think. And that keeps us also trapped. And so what I would do is go back to some of the videos that I made. I made one about like detoxes, spiritual detoxing. If you have parasites on the etheric, oftentimes they have a cord to parasites on the physical. Do a parasite cleanse, do a fast, do a detox, do a physical representation of what your intention is spiritually and etherically. So I really hope that you guys are hearing all of this. Let me know if you can hear me right now, just so I know what I have said and what I do not need to repeat on this chat. So definitely do the, okay, awesome. So yes, oh, thank you, Heather Ann. Hey, Claire Gordon. Hey guys, I'm so glad that you guys are here. And so to continue, okay, you can hear. Good. So start with the parasite cleanse, start with the detox. That is what kind of got me into a clearer headspace to initiate the cleansing of my own energy. Then you can do whatever, session feels right to you, if you need to go see like a healer or, a shaman. But ultimately, I feel like the work is ours. I feel like any entity removal is going to be done by you. I feel like it is, even if someone else can help you do it, if they're a very gifted healer, they're still really only going to be helping you achieve the resonance in which you don't, in which they can't survive attached. And so it's the same way that happens in their gut. That's why I kind of say to do a parasite cleanse, because parasites can only live in like a certain environment that they can survive in. And so if we change drastically, we do it on the physical, and we clear out, then we have to kind of rebuild inside through with diet, habits, lifestyle. We create an environment inside of our gut, inside of our stomach, our digestive tract, that parasites cannot survive in. We have enough stomach acid. We have enough digestive, we have a clear liver flushes, gallbladder flushes are some of the best things to do to clear out some of that etheric clogged energy. And it's also down there in the second, third chakras, which the grays and entities love connecting into that sexual creative energy of the second chakra. And then the third chakra is your power, your solar plexus, your solar energy, where the stomach kind of liver is. And so clearing those out clears out those chakras and makes available more energy and more power. And it makes you more, it makes less addictive habits and patterns can take hold when that is all clear. And then that, because really when it comes to attachments and it comes to even psychic attack, which the Greys operate via psychic attack often, like that is one of their main languages, I have noticed, is through psychic attack. And the only thing that they can do, and we've said this before, the only thing they can do is just pull up what's already there and try to amplify it. They can't introduce anything new, but they can kind of go through your thoughts and be like, what's her weakness? What's she scared of? What's her kind of thing? And so for me, it was like, I really just kind of I was always forced to do things I didn't want to do my whole childhood. And I really just wanted a rest and a break. And I really just, wanted to kick back and not have to be forced to do anything anymore. And so it was a wound of mine, and that was kind of being used, and it kind of stretched into laziness, and it stretched into things and it just started expanding to where I just had low energy and just this, but that, and then there's also like addictive patterns. They'll just kind of pull up childhood trauma, and then you just run to kind of whatever the weakness is. That is psychic attack. Okay. And that's where attachments happen. That's where they work. That's how they operate. That's their language. And then another thing to know about psychic attack that no one told me, and I wish I had known, was that as soon as I started doing what I was supposed to be doing, which was speaking, hey, as soon as I started doing that, I started getting psychic attacks. I started getting all of my own guilt and shame and self-unworthiness and like feeling so embarrassed and like, oh my gosh, like, who am I to be doing any of this? All of that, like unworthiness stuff of being wrong and lying. And that was something that was yelled at me when I was a child in underground bases. And now I understand why. Now, I don't like to give them omniscience. I don't like to say that they knew about everything, but I do know that they were having me remote view timelines and specifically look into the future and look into the past and then look off planet. And so I know that they are doing stuff. I mean, I know that there is stuff being done that is kind of an attempt to just hold us back and like hold humanity down, because just like any entity attachment, as we have discussed, requires a low resonance, right? So, beatbox break. Just kidding, I can't beatbox. So, all of that to be said, I just want to kind of remind you that really any work that you do on healing yourself, if it's going to a therapist, if it's taking a bath, I do love salt baths. I also love weighted blankets. I also love music. Like any of these things really just help clear. It's reading books at night. Like just anything that kind of like clears me out and makes me feel happy. That is an act of healing. That is an act of self-care, self-love. That helps you get back into your high vibration, back into your love, back into your passions, your dreams. Keep an eye on your dreams and goals too. Really, one of the things that I think really helps me is doing the morning pages. Keep your creativity moving. If you don't know what the morning pages are, look up The Artist's Way. It's where you write 3 pages of just stream of consciousness every day for a set amount of time. And it starts moving stuff out of your consciousness. If you're a person like me that loves journaling, so if that's something that you're attracted to, go look up The Artist's Way morning pages, because that is something that really moved things more than I realized. And I have to go back and do it like every, few years. I'll go back and do them. And that helps me get back in touch with my goals, with my dreams. And when I'm really in touch with my dreams and goals, then I'm really in touch with my guides, and they're really working with me, and we're in a communication. And getting in touch with your guides and your higher self and your past lives really clears you out quicker than anything else. It really just clears off any it starts clearing the trauma, it starts clearing off any attachments, any of that stuff. It just can't survive. They're not resonant frequencies. So that's just something to keep in mind. So yes, a little question break. Tamara, I've heard quite a few abduction stories that involve short grays and reptilians. Do they have a common agenda? Do they often work together? That's a really good question, because the one that I saw looking me in the eye, in my window, he essentially told me he was part of a gray reptilian hybrid project that was separate, like on its own. Now I don't know if that's a lie, but that's what he basically was saying. He basically was like, I'm half reptilian, half gray, and he looked like it too. So there's definitely, they do cross, they do intersect. And again, not all reptilians are bad. I hope that not all the grays are bad. I'm not trying to lump them all in together, but you know it when you feel it, and you know it when you start kind of getting the strength to get your memories back. You can kind of figure out that I don't think that those grays that used to come around were as good as I thought they were, or they didn't have as good intentions, as they should have. And so that's kind of when you know that it was probably the grays. I also have a weird memory. When I was a child, I was terrified of black windows, and all of these memories kind of come through black windows. I think it's the Black Mirror thing. So as a kid, if my curtains weren't closed, I was terrified. But one time I saw a face of like a smiling gray, and he had lots of teeth. And the grays that I've seen since then don't have a big mouth, like a really, really tiny mouth, like this big. They're almost invisible, and like a really sharp cheekbone. But this gray had kind of like a round face and like a wide smile with like teeth. And it was trying to like, hey, like pretend like we were buddies. And there were a couple of them. And I remember just thinking like, I just remember feeling like I wasn't seeing what was really there. And then I woke up the next morning with an incredibly badly scratched cornea. And I think there was even internal damage to the eye. It took a week to heal. It was crazy. And there was nothing that I remember doing in the night that had scratched my eyeball that bad, or during the day. I think an excuse was just made that I got dirt in it during the day. But it took a long time. So, and then I started having memories of something being done with the eyeball, and it was a reptilian. And they were trying to pretend like they were grays, because I think at that time I was so used to the grays interaction. And I think I had already had the hybrid. That was already part of the hybrid program at that point. And so I did kind of have a heart connection with my hybrid child. And that's getting into kind of a different story scenario too, going a little even further out that I had meant to. But I think that they kind of knew how to tug on my heartstrings, like what to try to appear as. But I was seeing through it. And I think oftentimes we see through things, and we feel them. Like we can feel through things. You can feel when something is weird on a certain level. Now, if we have trauma with the grays, which, many of us do, then our fear kind of lies to us, I should say. Like that trauma creates a fear that lies to us. And it's like, for example, when I was speaking at the beginning about just feeling like if I saw anything clairvoyant, it was going to be the gray. And I do not want to talk to anyone's, I do not want to do mediumship, because grays are just going to talk to me. And like that was like a fear of mine that I had to work through. Like I had to realize that wasn't, and like the first time, people were talking to me, I was like, are you a gray? I was afraid of them. And so I say this to just say that the process of healing can be complicated, and I needed help. Like I went to my psychic to help me, to my teacher, and she helped me kind of pull the threads apart of like what was, okay, what memory was, fused with another memory and then just like kind of crossed into this like blah feeling because my trauma was being triggered there for whatever reason. Because as soon as you go back to start clearing out these traumas, you start realizing that some of your earlier perceptions were colored in fear, colored by that trauma. And so we sometimes have to go back. Just like I had to go back and realize that, oh, about the grays, I'm totally spiritually bypassing because I wanted to make my experience with them beautiful the way that a birth should be, right? But that, the hybrid child program really wasn't beautiful for me. And I had to accept that in order to really get down to the truth of some of my other memories. So, all of that to say, I am going to look and see at your questions over here. Hi, Sarah S. Have you found that blood type has an association with galactic DNA or abductions? Thank you. I do think that there is definitely something to the whole negative Rh blood type being used for sure. But that doesn't mean, but I don't have rhesus negative. I have positive. I have like A positive blood. And my brother actually has rhesus negative. And while we were both abducted, really, I was the one that was kind of like used more for so many reasons. And so, yes, blood type is something, but it's more than just the rhesus negative. There's so many more markers than just the rhesus marker. I think there's like 22 other markers that I do believe have that is alien DNA, or I like how you put it, galactic DNA, and that though I think some of the other markers are what they're really looking for. They are, they do like to look for, the psychic bloodlines, or I see, they'll call them satanic bloodlines, and really, I kind of just think that like the satanic families, not the whole bloodline isn't satanic. It's the operating generational satanic abuse that is happening in them. That is what makes them satanic. The blood doesn't make them satanic. So if you've read that anywhere, just know that. So with abductions, yeah, I feel. So yes, to answer your question, I have found oftentimes that people will think that the gray abduction was a positive thing because the grays kind of cloak themselves to look like Arcturians or to look beautiful, like Syrians or something. And then I'm like, wait a second, like that's really not, but the fear is kind of there and like the feeling is just off. And so it's like, I don't know what that was, but then there is an actual memory. If they can kind of get through the trauma, there is an actual beautiful memory of a positive abduction. And I do feel like the grays piggyback on those of us that are here as hybrids, those of us that do have galactic past lives, galactic DNA, are part of old ancient DNA projects, and have reincarnated back in to help uplift humanity, mostly with our work, but our work activates our DNA, our self work, the work that we're doing, the work we do with our therapist, the work we do, with our children, giving home births, like one of you guys said. I think that was MJ. But yeah, I mean, the work that we do activates that DNA, and so there is a component of that too. But there's an attraction with the psychic children, the kind of the hybrid children, and the grays will try to latch onto that, kind of piggyback on the beautiful, uplifting, hybrid approach. Because just like that gray was kind of telling me without wanting to tell me anything, or maybe he did, I don't know. But there are warring, his words, not mine, warring hybrid programs going on. That it's not just one. It's way more complicated than that. And so to boil it down, which is a little bit kind of like me saying the grays are all bad, but they're not all bad. But I mean, you have to know that it's more complicated than just the hybrid program. There's more than one going on, and there's various intentions going on behind it. And so I feel like that now We're coming up out of the Kali Yuga, out of the Dark Age, up into and we're getting better frequency from the sun, from the galactic central sun. We're getting a higher frequency hitting us. Those of us that have this DNA, that have these past lives, it's getting activated, it's getting turned on. Those of us that have not done any work, have not activated anything, and instead have kind of covered themselves in, these like attachments, for lack of a better word. That's what happens with satanic ritual abuse. They don't have access. The sun can't penetrate. The solar plexus chakra does not receive from the sun. And so that's kind of why there are warring hybrid programs and projects. Yes, great. Thank you, Elle Fern. Olivia, thank you for speaking on your own experiences with the Greys. It is so helpful to hear. Thank you for that. I'm glad it's helpful. That's the point. I'm not sure if you were here, but this is meant to help validate the experience and validate you. And like I said at the beginning, if you're starting to feel like creeped or triggered, go turn on some music, go, do something else, get your vibe kind of back up, because that's really what this is all about. This is all about, and I think that part you guys could hear at the beginning, but this is all about really staying out of the fear, doing our work where to be clear, where we feel our own true fear that is in the moment of our trauma. Like we feel our own trauma, we feel our own pain, but that we don't just live in fear. Does that make sense? Like we don't just create it. Once we have a hold on kind of our inner world, like the beginning question about the moon, thank you for that. Once we kind of have a hold on our inner world, our emotions, once we know how we feel, we no longer have to recreate them around us. Once we know about, once we have an ongoing conversation with our pain, with our trauma, and we're no longer running from it, running to various addictions, various distractions. Once we have an ongoing conversation with it, then we start creating around us better things. We no longer, and that's manifestation, we no longer have to see on the outside world what we're trying to avoid inside. And so once we start doing that, that's the key to all of it. That and attachment, really, proper attachment to our parents as we grew up. With that, and that is something that's what I see that needs to be healed in the world. I feel like we're not taught to do attachment parenting. And then that just creates that first wound. That creates a very kind of cult loyal society without knowing they're cult loyal, because everyone has the same trauma, right? Everyone has the same pain. They think it's empathy, but it's really codependence. I have been there. So all of that to say, I feel like this is something that happens on the physical. It's something that, that can happen in the individual level, but it's on the societal level too. We're starting to see it expanding. We're starting to see a whole society kind of made up of some of the things that we, talk about with satanic ritual abuse and with the Greys and the different hybrid programs. It's becoming more obvious. And I do think that things are going to start coming out, but not in an honest way. And not in a way that I would want to really give too much credit to, because I think that the work that we're doing as a collective on our own, I think is much more important and helpful than really just waiting and letting people tell us what went on or what is happening. So yes, so just to go back to my notes to make sure that I got kind of everything I wanted to say on the Greys, and I think I am going to have to kind of go back because some of the stuff wasn't coming up when we got cut off, which that's going to be a fun edit. So, here's another one. Tamara, hi. Olivia, at some point, would you consider doing a video on hybrid children and the breeding programs? Yes, definitely. We will get into the hybrid children. That is kind of the next stage of this. It's the next step. I wanted to really get into the dynamics of how the grays work and how psychic attack works, to really just to really kind of illustrate to everyone how that happens and how this works. And I think once we know how beings operate, it is much easier to no longer be afraid of them, right? Once we know their tricks. And grays, what's interesting, grays are not creative. They might be sneaky where they can kind of show up as different things, but they are not, it's not creativity, it's stealing. They steal creativity. They steal your memory. Like they steal what's in here and go through. They're not generating anything organic of their own anymore. Hence their body type, like hence the, inability to reproduce. And so that sacral chakra, even the solar chakra, the third, those two chakras are really diminished. And that's why they attach there to really take that from us. And so that, especially if you suspect maybe an attachment, work on your creativity, really get back into that. When I was a kid, I actually loved poetry. I loved writing, and I would write poems. And as soon I was in second grade, and I had a very suspicious student teacher, who I thought was really awesome, and it turned out she was not. And it turned out she had some kind of connection, with the underground based program, because I would see her during the summers in there. But all my poems would be ripped off the wall. Like we would have a poem contest, it'd be on the wall, and like all the parents would come through, and the teacher would be like, "Oh, you have to see the poem." It would be missing. She'd be like, "Where's the poem?" I mean, who really steals a second grader's poem off the wall of a school? You know, it's just the little gaslighting things that can happen, to really just try to keep us from our dreams and keep us from doing what we would do that would maybe communicate and validate others' experiences. Like hopefully what is happening now, this is really what entities of a negative quality don't want in general. So that is why we're doing this. That's why I showed up to do this anyway. So thank you guys for showing up, with me to do this. And let's see what else. Do we have any other questions on here? Yeah, the hybrid children and the breeding programs. What's funny? Gigi Young actually did a video about the hybrid children, that you guys can go look up. It's like many years ago. And she made that video the day that she did a reading for me. She made a video and she is like, "Hi, Olivia, like, this is about you." So that is a really interesting video. You guys might like. Look up Gigi Young Hybrid Children, where this information kind of comes out, with her. And when she's making that video, like an actual Men in Black knocks at her door, like she tells a story like later. And so there's definitely there's a collusion to really just not let this be spoken of. I think if there's something that needs to be healed, it always has to be spoken about. There's something with the throat, right? We have to talk about it. We have to be able to give it voice somehow. Even if we just kind of speak it through the pen, even if we're just writing it, it has to kind of come out of us. It's a healing effect that it just heals so many. Speaking out is healing. And so I would just, really urge you to keep that in mind really with anything, that needs to be healed. Talk about it, talk about how you feel, like what you suspect, like talk about your intuitive hits, because that's a healing force. And that's really what I have found so much healing from. And that's really what I wasn't supposed to be able to do. I had to work really, really, really hard to get my self-worth back up to a level where I could be grounded enough to find my spirituality, to do this work, even though I was not supposed to, even though it was blown open in me as a child and then shut down. I had to push through, I had to fight to be able to get it back. And so there is kind of a level of finding your inner fighter, your inner warrior, your inner warrior goddess, right? Your inner Athena, to really get back out there and get and move the healing through. So yes, other people's stories, when we heal in ourselves, yes, we heal with others. It's good to to hear other people's stories because it's validating. So let me just check my notes and see if there's anything else that I needed to talk about. I did want to mention, again, if it got cut off when I was talking about this earlier, I just wanted to make sure that we knew that not all the abductions were grays, and some oftentimes, we have our positive, our family members around visiting. You can kind of tell the difference. The UFOs, it look kind of like tin cans, like the silver, like tin cans. It's like a kind of a lower vibrational frequency. And then you have like light ships and light orbs and light phenomenon. It's a very different frequency. And that'll kind of tell you like what is going on, what it's, how it feels. Like a black triangle has a very, very military feeling, a very different feeling than like a light ship or like a white, glowing light orb, that changes into rainbow colors and feels very beautiful. There's just a different feeling about them. And then the same really with technology and implantation and frequency devices. I mean, there's different implants that they will use in the body. If any of you guys are familiar with the implants, they use, it'll be like a metal ball or something for kind of like the military, like the grays. And then it'll be, like a clear, like crystal if it's trying to amplify something. And so oftentimes too, things will get kind of shut down, and then our guides and our family members will try to come in and help amplify it back up and try to kind of open it back up to even out what has been done. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to, like, I just don't want you to be like me where everything was kind of bad. Well, at first I think everything was good, and then I kind of made everything bad. I would just kind of swing between the dualities rather than being able to sit and pick apart the pieces of what was positive, and what was really not. So that's just kind of the work that we have to do when it comes to extraterrestrial and abductions, and really the UFO community in general right now is like a wild west out there. There's all kinds of just conflicting information and crazy stuff that you really have to have the ability to discern within yourself, more than you have to have the ability to discern so that you can really discern information on the outside, because it's just so much. So all of that being said, I did want to make sure that I got everything covered in my notes. And were there any other questions? Am I getting, let's see, am I seeing any other questions on the chat here? You can just put that in while I make sure that I've kind of gotten everything. But I just wanted to tell you all thank you so much. I have been sending kind of everyone energy, healing energy. I, connect with with source energy and my higher self, and my intention was for healing for everyone with the highest and best light and love for everyone. So hopefully you guys are feeling that, even though we had to switch over to a different stream and keep going, but we did keep going. And so I think it was a good illustration really of what a psychic attack could be like. It's really our own stuff. It's really like our own fears, essentially, just being used and amplified so that we have to face them. And how do we react? Right? And so we really just bounce back, keep going, keep it light. And that's really how we deal with psychic attack, right? After you do something that is in your highest good, doing something that's like a step towards your dreams, and afterwards you start feeling really, self-conscious, just notice, oh, this is my old stuff, and just keep moving, keep doing it anyway, not letting that psychic attack get you down. So yes, Claire Gordon, how do you feel about Sasquatch? I'm really glad you asked this, because I kind of wanted to talk about portals specifically, because it's connected. It's connected with the inner earth. It's connected with portals. So I'm wondering if you're relieved because I like them. Because I actually like Sasquatch, and I do like that the feeling I get from them is that they're interdimensional beings that live around portals and around people who are portal openers and around portals in the land. And I think that they can even be kind of portal guardians sometimes. And they often are attracted to people that have a close connection with nature and guardians of the land. Oh, good. I'm sort of coming out of the Sasquatch closet. That's so great. Yeah, you should tell your story. You should tell us in there, in the chat, what happened, because Sasquatch is really fun. And I think that they're attracted to people who they know are earth guardians, who they know are nature lovers, and they feel like, okay, they're safe. And they know that you can see them. They're kind of like the Greys in that way. They're interdimensional beings. Both the Greys and the Sasquatch are interdimensional beings that know when you're looking and know when you're not, and they know how to appear. And for me, honestly, they show up oftentimes as deer. I think one time there was a suspicious bird, but I'm not going to say for sure that was a Sasquatch. But there's like and kind of like an energy shift when I feel like, oh, that was not quite a deer. Like, I don't know. Or I could see something else moving, and then it looks like it turns into a deer, and I'm like, So be on the lookout for that, because I think sometimes they like to show up as deer, as just, it's also a symbol of like vulnerability and just connected to Mother Earth and the femininity and the land in a way that we have largely come away from. And that's another reason why they're connected to the Greys is, we split ourselves away from the land. We kind of, we industrialized, and so we weren't as connected. And so that left our root sacral chakras really vulnerable to attachment, to, just being kind of used. We were no longer connected to the mother. Now, again, like I was saying before about just entities in general, I do think that this is an initiation for our species, for our planet. It is an initiation process, but we just have to understand the dynamics and get through it, rather than letting it continue and thinking that it's one thing when really we're not allowing our psychic abilities to develop because we're traumatized. So that's part of getting through this global initiation. which is really what we're seeing all over the place. So, yes, I do think they have the ability to shapeshift. I really do. I don't know why. I don't know how. I think that they can make, and invisible is a good way of putting it. I kind of see them moving through dimensions more, like dimensional portals. They can kind of shift dimensions. So yes, it's like being invisible. And the Greys can do that too, but they are operating in different dimensions. Like I would see the Greys in like the lower astral, whereas I would see the Sasquatch in kind of a dimension that Earth used to be in, like a more, you know, Lemurian dimension, where we had more knowledge of the DNA changes that we were going to go through. We had more close connection with our alien DNA, right? And so it's like a vestige of how we used to be connected to the land and we no longer are. So we really have a lot to learn from Sasquatch. I actually, there are people that have past life memories of Sasquatch and being born in litters to a Sasquatch mother. There are Sasquatch abductions. They're very just interesting stories about Sasquatch. Yeah, definitely. I feel like we could definitely learn from them. Are they part human? You know, I think that they do have, you know, some human DNA, right? I mean, human is so many things. It's so complex and it's so alien. But yes, I think there's definitely, like, maybe they're more human than we are, you know, that kind of a thing. Um, and thank you, Cici Valcheva. Thank you so much for your comment. Let's see what else. It's our, Claire, yes, I do. I think we could have a lot to learn from them and from the grounded, like inner earth kind of memories that they hold from a less dense frequency. The way I get from them is very peace loving, but also playful. Like it's just like with anything, it's kind of like a dolphin. Like they're a very high vibration frequency, but they're still going to go after that fish. Like they're still going to go catch the fish because they're still grounded on the earth plane, the earth reality. So they have lessons about that to teach us. You know, if we get a little too ungrounded in the new age movement to understand how being attached to this reality is important, is what we came here to do. We came here to hold both, and we can't use spirituality as escapism. We have to make sure we stay connected. So DM, one day could you please make a video on the two worlds, i.e. Earth splitting? I know we're coming out of Kali Yuga and entering the Golden Age, but what does that look like? And when will that world begin? Ooh, that's a really good question. Earth splitting, you know, kind of feels like that's happening right now. There is a split going on. There is definitely, we are feeling that duality, and earth splitting is kind of something I have always seen. Like, I think that happens all the time. Like, timelines diverge all the time. We don't all have the same future. That has always just been known. Like, I've always just kind of known that. And so that is part of earth splitting, kind of right now into, well, definitely just it's cleaving into two specific timelines right now, but I feel like there's going to be more. So I'll have to see more about that, exactly about what you mean about the two worlds and earth splitting, because I don't know if I know exactly what you're referring to, but that's what I'm getting about that when it comes to like timelines and us not being all of the same future. And that's why it's important to know and not be gaslighted about all of the stuff that I've been talking about, and why I wanted to make this video, even though it's kind of a tricky subject. So yes. Any intuitive, Dana, hey, any intuitive hits on what the upcoming Saturn-Uranus square will bring? This is a really good question, Dana, because I am kind of feeling like something with the electrical grid. You know, Saturn is slowing down, and Uranus is electricity. It's electricity, it's genius, it's technology. So whatever it is, it's going to be a technology that is going to be stifled. If it's a square, it's someone else, you know, putting us into a box. It's not really us. It's like kind of coming from the outside. And so upcoming Saturn Uranus square, you know, I would be looking for maybe a power outage, or, you know, it could be earthquake kind of stuff. The Aztecs have been talking about earthquakes, but Saturn Uranus to me is like solar flare, electrical grid stuff. So the I would just really be sure that you maybe, like, let's see, I would really just be sure that you have stuff stocked up, or maybe yeah, like the zero battery, you know, or if you have, you know, as like a generator, any of that kind of stuff will just help not um have any fear about it, because I don't think that it's going to last super long, but I do kind of think it's going to be dramatic in at least one part of the world. And I'm not sure about how about where it's going to be, but I do feel like it'll be something um regarding electricity. There could also be something regarding um commodities, because Uranus and Taurus. So if you could look at water and food, like inflation prices. So that's kind of what I feel like. But I think we're also used to this now. I don't think it's going to really bring in like any like, it's not going to bring in really any energy that we're not kind of used to by now. So I think we're going to get through it. And yes, I think Sasquatch are possibly primordial beings of Earth, like original inhabitants. Yeah, definitely. And Tahira Abid, hi, Olivia. Thank you for what you were doing. Thanks so much for being here. I wanted to ask, are there snake beings, like as higher dimensional beings? Can they be guides? Yes. Snake beings, I feel, are connected to the Nagas oftentimes. I also see a golden cobra sometimes as a guide, which may or may not be. That golden cobra to me is more connected to Egypt, and the Nagas are more connected to India. Um, so they're so definitely the answer is yes. And the higher dimensional beings. So snake is power. It's Kundalini, right? And sometimes when snake guides come around, it can be right use of power. Like it can be the kind of what we're doing with our power and how we're using it correctly. So the Nagas bring in a lot of creativity too. It's Kundalini. So it's a meditational energy that you built using your spiritual abilities and raising your Kundalini and getting into meditation. So sometimes if snake beings come around as guides, they have a message about power. They have a message about getting back into your power, especially feminine power, and getting that um, getting that momentum going for yourself with your spiritual growth. That is what the snake beings told me. That was the message for me from them, and that's often why they come through, because they're here with they often kind of come with dreams. Like, what are your big dreams? They're here to help you have the power to go for it. And the Nagas as beings are super ancient beings that are actually, they have stories in India about inner earth. And so they're about the inner earth. They're connected to the inner earth. They have tunnels. They would live in tunnels and they went back down into the tunnels. And of course, just like anything, there were good ones, and there were, service to self and service to others. There were good ones and bad ones, but this is in the Indian, texts. This is what they would talk about the Nagas, and the Nagas now have a connection with inner earth. And so I would look into um, past life connections, Indian past life connections. I would look into inner earth connections, like with the ancient inner earth species. And when you go back far enough, like there are so many different, you go back to the Eastern traditions, you have Hanuman, who's a monkey king, who's a monkey god. It's like he's like and then the Nagas were snake people. And then of course, with Egypt, we know there were lots of animal, people, things, and there's so the DNA of animals now have an ancient connection back to very, high vibrational power. And so it's also like you, Tahira, you might see snakes around, like you might see a snake around, or you might have seen a snake in the past, and it's kind of bringing that Naga, the snake being, guide energy around, and that can happen sometimes. So I have talked about kind of animal and power totems in the past. They do represent a very, very ancient primordial DNA of Earth that we are intimately connected with being here. And that's, part of it. It's what makes us human, because we have much bigger brains, but they're connected to the inner earth. And that's why once you start, journeying down there, or hearing stories or doing regressions surrounding the inner earth, which are actually really fun. Past life regressions where we go to inner earth are very, very fun, very beautiful. And it brings up so much, because it's kind of like excavating, your deep inner memories. It's like it's the moon, right? It's the unconscious. So all of that beauty and just that connection can really come out, because it connects us to very, very old past lives here on Earth and beyond, because all of those beings came from elsewhere too. Okay, so moving on, are Kundalini awakenings painful? They can be. Mine kind of was. I had one. I'm not going to say it's like a full on Kundalini awakening, because that can be very, very specific. And I think that can be, what I actually experienced was kind of a mini Kundalini awakening, and it was kind of painful. It wasn't pain in the way that, you would traditionally kind of explain pain. It felt more like electric shocks, like electricity. And so really what that was clearing out blockages in the Kundalini, but it awakened something that I started seeing like immediate manifestations after that. And so it was a Kundalini awakening, but probably not in, the traditional yogi sense of what a Kundalini awakening is. And actually, I'm really glad you asked that, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to interview my husband, and you guys can all listen to what he says. My husband is Hindu, he's Indian, and he's on here. But I'm going to have him on where he can talk about Hindu cosmology and, the Eastern stuff. He can talk about Kundalini. He can talk about meditation. I actually mainly learned meditation from him first. He was my segue into going to Vipassana. He's the one that told me about Vipassana, and he's a meditation teacher. He's a naturopath and a meditation instructor. So I am going to have him on here, and we're going to talk about, he can get more into detail about Kundalini awakenings specifically, and about meditation. Meditation the way that the Buddha taught it, like meditation the way that you get the best results the quickest. So that that just keep a watch out for that. We are super dorky and we're going to do an interview for you guys, but I think it will be really relevant and I think it'll be really fun. And on that note, we're also, if you are in Nashville, you can go to my Facebook and see we're doing a Ascension Intensive. So if you look on my Facebook, you'll see a flyer for that soon. So just keep an eye out for that if you're local, or if you are close enough to drive. So yeah, thank you guys. And I hope that you stay tuned for my next videos and getting out there, putting more videos out. Thank you so much for your questions. So I know what videos you guys like. I might just do another video on the grays because I got cut off and I am not sure what was heard and what was not. So that might be redundant, but just keep an eye out for that. And I really am glad that you guys were here. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for being patient and being wonderful and being amazing. And please email me with any other thoughts or experiences or questions because it's so fun to hear from you. And please always put your questions in the comments. I can get back to you through there too, because it's really fun to just see what you guys are interested in. So that just kind of gets the channel going. It kind of keeps it moving. So I know what content to make. I know what kind of videos that you guys want to hear about. And then I will do more lives. I kind of like doing them once a month like this. So we will just keep that going. So thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great night. I hope that, you know, if you're feeling creeped out or triggered by any of the topics that I talked about, turn on some music, turn on some dance music, turn on Tibetan chant, you know, get out some incense, whatever makes you take a salt bath, whatever makes you feel clean and clear and happy, upbeat. You fill your house with it. Keep it moving. Feel good. Okay? So, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and have a great night.